Alright, so I am back, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons. Now, a bit of some background behind my history with the Atlanta Falcons. I thought the Atlanta Falcons were going to not only win the NFC South, but I thought they were going to be a very good team this year. I had them going 10-7, and as of right now, they're not going to hit that mark. They currently have a record with 8-9, and they have a very clear deficiency at two major positions they have to fix. And I'm not going to beat around the bush and make you guys wait for some sort of answer, because in today's video, I want to answer those questions they have in those two positions. So without further ado, let's just hop right into it. So I think the best way to start this video is by just blatantly telling you guys what two positions they struggle at the most. And well, one of them is an actual position that's on the field, and one of them is within the coaching staff. And I don't really think it takes a genius to understand what I'm talking about. It is, of course, the quarterback position and the head coaching position. It is no surprise that Desmond Ridder has not been a very good quarterback this year. I think he is basically the definition of mediocrity. Like, if I had to sum up Desmond Ridder in just a couple words, I would basically just say that he is a very average quarterback who's not necessarily going to win you games, but he's also not typically going to lose you games. I mean, just look at his stat line. He has a 63.3 completion percentage for 2,528 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And on the season, he really hasn't had a game that he necessarily just completely sucked in, maybe outside of the Commanders or Jaguars games, but he also hasn't had any games where he's been particularly great. He's just been kind of mediocre. He only has 6 games this season with more than 200 yards, and for a quarterback, that's typically not very great. And to be honest with you, coming into the season, I thought Desmond Ridder was going to be a fine holdover quarterback until they get a legitimate prospect in that quarterback spot, but it turns out it's not necessarily the case. And the reason why I thought Desmond Ridder was going to be a fine quarterback to fill in the spot was because of the fact that he doesn't necessarily turn the ball over, at least from what I saw last year, and this team is so ridiculously talented, especially along the offense, that I thought Desmond Ridder was going to get carried by the talent, and they're going to win several games just because of the talent alone. And I'm still going to stand by that statement, but the reason why that didn't really work out this year is, well, because of Arthur Smith. When you're in an offense with guys like Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and a phenomenal offensive line, I thought that would be perfectly fine and good enough to get this team to at least win the division. And again, to back my statement, I think with a very good head coach, that would definitely be the case. I look at a guy like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, or hell, even the guy in Minnesota. I think you get any of those head coaches, I still think this team makes the playoffs, because those are guys who have worked with mediocre quarterbacks and know how to get the most out of them. And typically they're able to do that because of the talent that surrounds the quarterback, elevate his play. And in my opinion, I just don't think Arthur Smith is doing a good enough job of using those talents to elevate the quarterback position they currently have. I'll give you an example. Look at what Jared Goff was doing all the way back with the LA Rams when they made the Super Bowl run. That was a very talented roster that had so many great pieces, but of course Jared Goff was just an average quarterback. Another example would be the 49ers, who carried Jimmy Garoppolo to a damn Super Bowl. So my thought process coming into the season is that if Arthur Smith could tap into the potential of the talents that are on this offense, they could carry Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke to have a very good record this year. But despite all my hopes and all my thoughts regarding this team, none of it has came true this year. This offense currently sits 24th in the entire NFL in points per game, 16 in yards per game, and 26 in touchdowns per game. And I think the part that really frustrates me the most is the simple fact that Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson don't have 1,000 yards. And to me, that simply makes no sense at all. Yes, I get it, your quarterback situation is very limiting, but if you design plays for the guys who are the stars of this team, good things are going to happen. And I think the whole really bizarre thing of this whole situation is that Arthur Smith is from the Tennessee Titans, who buried Derrick Henry into the ground. He was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans between 2019 and 2020, and in 2019, Derrick Henry had 303 attempts, 1,540 yards, 16 touchdowns, and in 2020, he had 378 attempts, 2,027 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Whereas when you compare that to Bijan Robinson's stats this year, who currently only sits at 188 attempts for 873 yards and 4 touchdowns, that makes no sense at all to me. A guy that you spent a top 10 pick on, and I'm sorry, I think he is the best running back talent-wise in the entire NFL right now. Yet despite that, there are still games where Bijan Robinson is getting less than 20 touches. And I'm not even just talking about using him in the run game. Use him in the pass game. He only has 48 receptions the entire season. In fact, he only has one game this year, and it happened against the Cardinals on November 12th, where he has more than 20 carries. And I get it. We live in a system now where every single team is utilizing multiple running backs, and I completely understand if you want that for the longevity of his career. But in my opinion, there is zero excuses to not use this guy at all. If you don't want to run him 30 times a game, I completely understand. But he might be one of the best pass-catching running backs in the entire NFL. Why is he not catching the ball in space? Why is he not getting screens ran for him? What is happening with Bijan Robinson that's not getting him the ball at least 20 times a game? Time for my next rant. Kyle Pitts, who I'm going to make a strong argument to be the most talented player in the entire NFL. We're talking about a guy who's 6'6", 247 pounds, and a complete freak of nature. Yet despite everything he has, he only has 50 catches for 635 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he only has 2 games with more than 5 catches. That to me is ridiculous. And sure, blame the quarterback position all you want. I 100% agree. But that also comes down to Arthur Smith not designing anything for this guy. Again, another guy you spent a top 10 pick on. And going back to what I said earlier, I think he might be the most talented pure player in the entire NFL. Name another guy who's 6'5" and above who can run as fast as him and can do everything that he can do. I'm sure you can probably come up with a name, but to me, I think he's one of the most talented players in the entire NFL. It is a damn shame that he is not using him. And of course, last up, Drake London, who only has 61 catches for 808 yards and 2 touchdowns. How the hell is someone as talented as Drake London not getting 1,000 yards every single season? And what baffles me even more about this is they don't really have a great number 2 receiver. Their number 2 is Van Jefferson and Kaderil Hodge. So there is legitimately no excuse for this guy not to have at least 80 catches for 1,000 yards. And to me, that is the bare minimum of what he's capable of doing. I think this is a guy who can easily have 1,300 yard seasons. And similar to Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, this is a guy who's just not getting the ball enough. On the year, he only has 2 games with more than 7 catches in the entire season. And in those 2 games, he had 9 catches for 125 yards and 10 catches for 172 yards. To me, there is absolutely zero excuse why these guys should not combine for over 3,000 yards. They have the most talent in the NFL offensively speaking, yet they have a lackluster offense. And sure, blame Desmond Ridder all you want. I think he is definitely a part of the problem, but I'm going to put most of the problem on their head coach, Arthur Smith, because I've seen these new head coaches come in and do way more in 1 year than he has done in the past 3 years with the Atlanta Falcons. So that's my rant about Arthur Smith. As for who I would like to see him get replaced by, I'm a big fan of Ben Johnson. I think he would be a great fit for the Atlanta Falcons. I know some Falcons fans might want an experienced head coach, but I just don't think there's a whole lot of options out there. I think Ben Johnson would know how to use a guy like Bijan Robinson effectively. And right now, the defense is totally fine. We'll get to that defense here in a second because they are fucking fantastic. In fact, let's just talk about them right now because they are ridiculously good. They rank 6th in opponents' points per game, 9th in opponents' yards per game, and 2nd in the NFL for opponents' touchdown per game. And of all 32 teams in the NFL, this is the #1 red zone scoring team. So yeah, shout out to that defense, shout out to Jesse Bates. If that team was any good, I think Jesse Bates would be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. Back to potential replacements, I like Ben Johnson. I think another guy who could be pretty interesting is Eric Bieniemy if you want a more experienced guy. I just don't know if Eric would be that interested in this job specifically because he doesn't have a quarterback already set up for him. All I know is that if I was looking for a future replacement for a guy like Arthur Smith, I would have to bring in a successful offensive coordinator who knows how to get his weapons the ball in space. And if I'm the one making the contract, I would make it a contract obligation to have Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London all go for over 1,000 yards. That's just my opinion. Now, in terms of a potential replacement for Desmond Ridder, I think there are 4 realistic possibilities. The #1 most realistic possibility for me is that the fact that they're going to probably take a quarterback in the first round. And that seems to be what the Falcons are probably going to end up doing, as I've seen a lot of reports talking about they're going to be looking for potential quarterbacks in this year's draft, guys like Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams, so on and so forth. And I definitely do think that is a legitimately good possibility for this team. You already have a bunch of young guys like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, so on and so forth. I've already talked about them. You just now need a young quarterback who has the talent to give them the ball. And I think that makes a ton of sense because the talent is already on the team. If you're going to get a young quarterback on a rookie contract, you can bring in even more talent to make those Super Bowl runs this year. So that can definitely be interesting. I would definitely love to see this team go out there and get a young quarterback. My top pick for them would probably be a guy like Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix, because as much as I would love to see a guy like Caleb Williams or Drake May fall to them, I just don't see that happening. Not unless they are, of course, willing to trade up to get one of those guys, but I just don't personally see that happening. I think whoever they bring in, he has to have a good arm, an accurate arm, and he has to be the best thrower available. That's why for me, I think Michael Penix makes a ton of sense for this team. The next idea I have for this team is to go after Kirk Cousins. I am a big fan of Kirk Cousins, and I understand that he's 35 years old and he's going to be on a probably long-term deal for your team, as this is probably going to be one of his last contracts. And what's also scary is that he's coming off of an injury, but I just think this guy is legitimately super amazing. Yes, I said super amazing. He is just really good. I thought this year before the injury, he was having an MVP-like season, and I think when you have weapons like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson, and a great offensive line, I think you can handle an older quarterback, especially when you're in a conference who right now is kind of lacking quarterback talent. Right now, the top quarterbacks in the NFC are Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and maybe Jared Goff. So if you're Atlanta, if you go out there and get Kirk Cousins, you're probably already going to have the 3rd best quarterback within the conference. And when you're looking talent for talent at each team, I think the Atlanta Falcons have maybe the most talent there. They have a great offense with a great offensive line and a fantastic defense. So if you're asking me, I definitely do think that this is a team that should potentially be looking at Kirk Cousins because I think he could be a win-now candidate this year. Another possibility is going to be going after Justin Fields, assuming the Chicago Bears take Caleb Williams or Drake May with their #1 overall pick. Again, this is kind of going back to finding a guy who can help you win now, but who's also kind of a young player, so it kind of fits both checkboxes. As for what you would give up for a guy like Justin Fields, I wouldn't give up my 1st round pick, but I'd be definitely willing to give up my 2nd round pick for him if they do decide to go down that route. I'm not the biggest fan of this one because I just don't love Justin Fields as a pure passer, and again, I just want to maximize guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Could Justin Fields maximize his potential with a team like the Atlanta Falcons and a competent head coach? 100%. I wouldn't deny that. I think that'd be a very fun idea. And let's get this out of the way. This would be one of the most explosive offenses in the entire NFL if they were to go after a guy like Justin Fields. But I don't know. I just feel like this team needs a pocket passing guy who's going to make the right throws at the right time, and I just don't know if that's what Justin Fields really is. For Justin, I think this would be a great signing for him. I think he'd fit in so nicely down there in Atlanta, but I just feel like there's better options available for the Atlanta Falcons to go down. The 4th option is that they go after
Mr. Unlimited. Yeah, you gotta be unlimited. You know?
Russell Wilson. This is of course assuming that the Denver Broncos are going to cut Russell Wilson like reports are coming out as. This could definitely be interesting. Now I don't really know how much money they'd be willing to give him, and I don't really know if he'd be going for a ton of money because of his current contract situation. And based off everything I've been hearing about the Russell Wilson ordeal, it seems like the Atlanta Falcons are very interested in him. Now I did a poll on my channel, and based off all the viewers' perspective of things, they're saying that Atlanta should go after him as well. Do I like this idea? Not really. I think if they want to go after a win now quarterback, I think Justin Fields and Kirk Cousins are better options. But what I will say about this is that Russell Wilson does have a proven track record, and if you bring in a guy who is familiar with his game, I wouldn't hate this at all. Now again, similar to Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson is on the older side, so this is a win now move. And if this team is willing to take on his culture and see if it fits within theirs, then I think they should go for it. But me personally, I just think there's 3 better options available out there. And I think with a schedule next year that's going to be much harder, you want to go out there and get the best quarterback option available, and I just think the first 3 are better than what Russell Wilson can give you at this point in his career. Now what I will say is this: if they strike out on getting a quarterback in the draft, if they strike out on Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields, I definitely do think Russell Wilson should be in their books to get done. But I think if they can manage to hit on the first 3 ones that I mentioned, then I think Russell Wilson is completely out of the situation here. But let's kind of just end this off on kind of a positive note for Atlanta Falcons fans, because this has kind of been a disappointing year for them. You're 8-9, you're probably going to have a top 10 pick, you have some really good defensive pieces, and I think next year with a harder schedule, the defense might take a small step back, but I still think it's going to be a top 10 to top 15 unit. You still have a great offensive line, you still have great offensive weapons, you have a great running back, and hell, you have 2 great running backs to go along with that. All you need now is a quarterback and head coach, and unfortunately, those are probably the hardest positions to find in the NFL. But if you find those, I promise you guys are going to be much better next year. But Atlanta Falcons fans and NFL fans, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think the Atlanta Falcons should do next year so they can have a better season. And if you agree and disagree with anything that I said, make sure to tell me in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button because that helps me out a ton. We are currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers and we are damn near close. But I love you guys. Peace.